on into it. First and foremost, I want to say thank you essentially for taking time out of your Saturday to pretty much kick it with me for a little bit. And what I intend to do is take about maybe 50 to 55 minutes. So roughly finish up right before the top of the hour, or the bottom of the hour, depending on how you look at it. But how I like to structure these types of presentations is more so of I want it to be a two-way conversation. So understand I have a presentation that I'm gonna go through, but feel free to stop me with any questions at any time. And whether, I'm not sure if you could, a chat. So if you have a question, by all means, feel free to ask it, or you could even put it in the chat down in the window below. Okay. I'm gonna take it as a yes. So everybody's pretty much muted, which is cool. But yeah, if you have any questions, just let me know. All right, so I'm gonna share my screen and we'll jump right on into it. Boom, boom. All right, put this up here. All right, so can everybody see creating a lifetime of financial security? All right, perfect. All right, so essentially what does financial security mean to you? So this is where it's going to take two-way conversation. So I really just want to get a good feel as far as like what everybody thinks about it.
For me, it just means like being able to buy things that I want to buy, because I'm a college student. So just having that luxury.
Okay. And what about you, Me? So just so I'm clear,
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, I thought I was unmuted. But financial security is what we teach here at More for More. And I feel for individuals or families to feel financially secure, that means that they don't have to, they basically take the worry of finances off the table. They're secure in their jobs or their careers or their entrepreneur opportunities they've decided to delve into. It's one less thing that you have to worry about financially when, if you want something or you need something, you don't have to go beg Peter or steal from Peter to pay Paul. So just having that residual funds or savings built up so you feel comfortable when you lay your head down.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, good. And honestly, you guys aren't too far off, right? Being able to have exactly what you want when you want it, and not have to essentially stress about it, is essentially what I do. And what I found to be, I guess you could say, the best practice is to ensure that you guys, or our clients rather, have plans built to not only assess risk management, but provide wealth accumulation, wealth preservation, and distribution. And essentially that's all we're going to cover today. We're going to hit all those nodes and how they tie into pretty much making sure that you have that financial security that you want. All right, so let's go back to here. All right. So essentially, we pretty much touched on this really. But when it comes to financial security, to be completely frank with you, it's one of those things where the majority of Americans, especially young workforce professionals, just don't. They don't feel like they're financially secure for several reasons. You know, whether it's outstanding college debt or just not knowing where to start. So one of the best ways in which you can help prevent that is to have a plan with a financial advisor who's not only credible, but has the knowledge and know-how to not only build the relationships with you, but to plan that out so that you could essentially live the life you want to instead of the life that you have to. Now, sorry, touchscreen. This is pretty much what I was alluding to earlier. A lot of people just don't know where to start, or essentially how to start. And it's really my job in my practice to ensure that we're able to knock this out with no problems. Now, can you guys see this okay? Like on my end, I don't know if it's jumping out on your side, but I'm having like a little.
It is cut off. If you go to slideshow, I believe. Scroll over, like at the bottom, yeah. Maybe from the beginning.
All right, sorry.
Okay, there we go.
Good to go. Okay. Now, when it comes to financial planning, you got to understand everybody's at just how we have, you know, different personalities and different cultures and upbringings. So does your financial plan, or you could say your financial situation, is going to be as unique as you are. So not every plan is going to be the same for everyone. And that's one important thing that you need to understand when working with a financial advisor, is that you need to find someone that's not only credible, but also doesn't give the same plans for everybody. And really, it's not a one size fits all. Like your financial plan is not going to be something that's just going to be pretty much said and done as a one-time go. It's not going to work like that. Your financial plan is going to be a living document, so that whether, you know, you could start today as a college student like you are, ma'am, but typically when you get married, have kids, you know, buy a house, buy a car, vacation, whatever that is, your financial plan essentially needs to follow that lifestyle and make those changes so that it can provide you the knowledge and know-how to ensure you that you have the funds available to do whatever it is that you need to do. And really, this is what I alluded to earlier, is that with your financial plan, those life events, they need to be up there and updated into your plan, so that when your plan goes through whatever stages you begin with, it needs to pretty much morph all the way through that lifestyle, all the way up until the end. So you really want to get a snapshot of where you currently start to where you want to be. And then from there, you just pretty much walk that glide path. Now, things to keep in mind, like life is one of those things where the guarantees that are going to happen are death and change. And your financial plan should essentially incorporate and have the flexibility to move left and right, so that it could also change with those changes. Now, when it comes to your financial plan, there's really three things that you really want it to hit, like the three basic. A, you want to manage risk. Second, you want to ensure that you have plans in place so that you can start saving and investing for your future self. And then third, pretty much preserve and distribute the empire that you built in the way in which you want it to be built. So how are we going to do this? The biggest thing, that's the biggest takeaway, is risk management. So protecting your ability to reach your goal is paramount, to be completely honest with you. And to sit here and to actually think about life is just going to be, all I guess you say glitter and happiness is really it's untrue and really unfair to you, to be honest with you. We all know that as we go through life, the unexpected is going to happen. Nobody really wants to sit here and plan for the worst, but when it comes to your finances, that's something that you don't want to take lightly. So, planning for an unexpected death, getting sick, getting injured is definitely one of the things that we want to lay as a foundation for our financial plans to ensure that regardless of what happens, we're covered, we're good. Now, one of the ways in which we could do that, if we're not looking at life insurance or disability income insurance, or even just an inheritance, some type of safety net, something that we could start from, from ourselves within, that is fairly simple, is setting up an emergency fund. Whether it's a long-term or short-term, typically an emergency fund will give you enough cushion to react and essentially overcome to get your life back on track from those unexpected events. Now, typically what I try to brief all my clients is to have a minimum of 6 months of living expenses. And the goal for that essentially is to get to a point in which you could have 6 months worth of, I guess you could say 6 months worth of funds to pretty much produce your comfortable standard of living. And by doing that, essentially what that means is that you have all your savings ingrained into your emergency fund, so that in the event something was to happen and you were to lose let's say your job, or even now a pandemic was to hit and they start laying off people, you're able to continue to contribute to savings, pretty much knock out all your bills, and sustain the same standard of living that you had before. And basically what that will allow you to do is now employ every dollar up until that threshold to effectively employ for you. And basically what that means is that every dollar over that 6-month mark is now making money towards your future self. So whether that's a retirement account, a Roth IRA, or even a life insurance policy, whatever, all that stuff is now contributing to the betterment of your future self. And honestly, like it's the most important key to a financial plan is that we start. Like, by all means, it's great that we can sit here and talk about it, but any action, or better yet, any plan without any action is just a wish. Okay. So the key fact there is just getting started. Now, when it comes to paying down debt, one of the things that we take into account is interest rates. Now, when it comes to interest rates, for the most part, you don't want to just pay down the minimum balance, due to the simple fact that the minimum is going to take you substantially longer. And by the time you do end up paying off your minimum, you're going to be paying multiple times over what you originally thought was the purchase price. And to be completely frank with you, majority of my clients don't even remember what it is they bought, or better yet, what they're paying for. So long story short, definitely we want to ensure that your financial plans have a no kidding start and end time for when we're going to pretty much knock out this debt, so that we're holding somebody accountable, essentially you. So, what we try to incorporate is, what we'll do is we'll look at the interest rates, and then, no kidding, your budget. If you have the ability to pay down, let's say $1,000 worth of debt in a year, and for whatever reason you feel comfortable doing it in 3, we're gonna show you the benefits of paying it off in a year and the benefits of not pretty much pushing that down the road and telling you the difference, and just pretty much putting you in that environment of your future self now versus then. So what do you consider your most important asset at this point?
My financial stability right now, being able to stay in my home, having a 401k or retirement plan, and being able to just enjoy life. I guess, so house, retirement plan, and I guess a little spending money for me to enjoy life.
Okay. And for the most part, I wouldn't say that you're wrong. I mean, you're on the right track. Anybody else? Okay, so typically your most important asset is your ability to make money. So yes, Christina, you were right on track with the 401k, your ability to pretty much fund your future self. And it's very important that we protect that through various means. And really the emergency plan is just the start. But to have a good lock on financial security, we're going to dive into how we actually go into pretty much securing your overall funds. Now, like I mentioned earlier, your ability to make money is your most important asset, right? The current theme amongst 30-year-olds, as far as patterns go, is that 1 in 4 are going to incur a disability that's going to pretty much last a little over 2 years. Now, I guess you could say, if we could take anything away from this pandemic, is that if we were to lose our ability to have an income for the next 2.5 years, let alone 8 months since COVID has started, it'll be straight chaos. So it's completely vital that we protect the income that we have coming in. And as I mentioned earlier, the three factors that we really have to plan as far as taking away or protecting your income is going to be disability, long-term care, and death. Now, when it comes to a disability, most people think that catastrophic needs like most people think something catastrophic needs to happen. But that's not the case. It could be something as simple as, if you're a designer, you breaking your arm, losing the functionality of your fingers, not being able to sit because you had a car accident and you suffer whiplash. It's things like that that we take into account, because let's be real here, majority of disabilities are not going to happen in the workplace. It's going to be doing something that you like, whether it's extracurricular activities or just something relaxing. Like me, I like to go fishing, right? I like to be on a boat, and that in itself has inherent hazards. However, but it's just something I love doing, and it's the same thing for most of our clients. So that's something that we take into consideration on top of everything else, whether it's the heart attacks, the cancer, problems with pregnancy. So we take that all into effect so that at the end of every month, at the minimum, we have at least 80 to 85% of our monthly income coming into the house. Now, when it comes to a disability, like disability insurance or disability income, for a lot of my business owners, young entrepreneurs, they're very hesitant, just for the simple fact that they don't know much about it, or more so the pros and cons of it. Now, when it comes to disability income insurance through your employer, typically what they'll do is they'll give you an option to have either a short-term or a long-term. Typically, they cover roughly 50 to 60% of your average income. Now, starting out, a majority of my clients don't take into account what 60% of their income looks like. So typically what I try to do is I like to put them in a mindset of the worst case scenario, living off 40%. So one thing that I like to step back and question them with is, you're willing to insure your house, your car, if you're married, wedding rings, jewelry, any item that you buy. But when it comes to actual ensuring the means to buy those items, there's pushback. And typically when I explain it to them in that fashion, it gets the ball rolling as to why that is. It's kind of backwards. You want to protect the asset that gives you everything else, not the result of the asset. And one of the, I guess you could say it's it's quickly growing as a concern for a lot of old, I wouldn't even say old, but just the senior community, especially with the baby boomers, is long-term care. Now, long-term care is, I don't know if you guys had the opportunity or the privilege to work with anybody that's, the elderly or have a cognitive brain disease or some type of terminal illness. Have you?
I have. My grandmother actually passed away in 2013 from lung cancer.
Okay.
And my grandfather passed away a few years before that with Alzheimer's. So the deterioration of the brain. So yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
And secondly, like I could hear it in your voice, like that's a stressful time, both emotionally and financially. Now, long-term care is quickly rising in expense. Like right now, it's on average in Hawaii, I know just to have a decent in-house provider is roughly about $25,000 a month. Now, if you're not taking the foresight to plan for this early, this long-term care could quickly drain any financial reserves anybody has planned for, right? So it's imperative that it's something that we look into early, because just like anything else in life, the earlier you get it, the cheaper it's going to be. And typically when it comes to investments, i.e. investing in yourself with your financial plan, the earlier you start, the more potential it has to yield. So it's definitely something that you want to not breeze over. And just because you're young now, it doesn't mean it's something that's out of your realm of planning. You definitely want to take into consideration long-term care, because it's one of those things where you're going to wish you had it if you need it. And when you don't need it, you're glad that you have it, because that's just extra funds for you to essentially do whatever it is that you want to do, whether that's go vacation, buy a house, set up some type of generational planning, whatever the case. Yeah, pretty much hit on that. So when it comes to overall death, or just better yet, life insurance, what are your overall thoughts of life insurance? Like what have you guys heard in the past as far as life insurance?
I think we've had this discussion. And I know a couple of my family members that haven't been able to make it on here realize, and friends are starting to realize the importance of life insurance. It's funny because when like probably a couple years ago, first of all, my grandmother and my grandfather taught us all to have life insurance. My father and my mother, we all talk about it. And a couple years ago, like everybody used to laugh, all my friends, and say, "Oh my gosh, you have everybody, you have an insurance policy on everybody. Don't kill me off." And then when the elder or just best friends or other family members in their life began to pass away, and they were either looked to for the financial to provide financially, or you had to pass the collection plate or whatever the case may be, or just being able to want to help, they realize the importance of it. The older you get, I think that's where it comes in. And I would say that I've benefited from having a life insurance policy on a couple occasions, and I truly can say that it relieved a lot when it came to debt, when it came to taking care of the home, taking care of the estate, and just me financially being able to enjoy life after them, and not having to think about the burdens that I had to take care of, or I would have had to take care of without that financial opportunity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. Like, we definitely spoke about this in depth. And it's definitely one of those things where you're not necessarily going to see the value of it unless you have a financial advisor that breaks it down to you, or you find somebody older that essentially you've learned to have a trusted relationship with, that sits you down and explains the benefits of having it. But when it comes to life insurance, a lot of times people have the misconception that it's just a death benefit. And it's not. That's just half the, that's just half the story. There's several types of life insurance out there. But typically the most common are going to be term insurance and whole life, or a permanent. And what most people hear about are the term. And basically what term insurance is what you see on the commercials, where you could get like $1 million of coverage for like $20 a month. And typically that in itself isn't really attractive, other than having a death benefit and having $1 million in coverage. That's great. But as far as like a living benefit, term insurance really doesn't do anything for you. Now, when it comes to life insurance, or whole life insurance rather, that's like a whole new ball game. So the best way to think about it is using the analogy of real estate. Now, term insurance is like leasing an apartment or renting an apartment. And permanent life insurance is like owning a house. So with term insurance, you're essentially just going to pay a certain amount of money for a certain amount of time. And once that timeline is up, you're going to walk away with nothing. The landlord is going to keep all the money, i.e. the insurance company, which is cool. But if you don't die within that time frame, it really does you no benefit. Okay. But whole life insurance, you're going to pay a certain amount of money for a certain amount of time, just like if you were buying a house, paying on a mortgage. There's going to come a time where you're going to make your last mortgage payment and you're going to own that asset outright. It's the same thing with whole life. And with whole life, it's just going to continue to grow. Like, there's no possibility of loss. Like, it's one of those things where, especially when I sit down with my clients, my young investors, like even those that are in 55 to 60 year age range, they can't thank me enough for the simple fact that now they have such safe money. And the reason why we call it safe money is because it can't lose value. It just continues to grow and outpace inflation. And that's just one of the key things, or key factors, that you want to incorporate into your financial plan, is the effects of taxes and inflation, so that your dollars are being not only effective, but they're providing you the biggest bang for your buck. And then, all of which, with your insurance policies, you want to make sure that you have enough there to provide or just make up for your financial absence. So typically, you don't just want to pay for a funeral, right? You want to provide the support needed from the day you pass all the way through retirement. So the same amount of money that you would have brought into the household as if you were living is essentially the same amount of coverage you want to have. And then from there, you just implement that and you use that as the foundation for your financial plan, and you build on it, with investments, speculative investments, whether it's 401ks, retirement accounts, or, emergency funds, whatever it is. But you want to use the foundation as life insurance and then build on top, because there's no point in building a house on sand. right. Let me see. All right, so just to recap, just for the first portion of it, the 3 unpredictable circumstances that we really want to prep for. I see a question. Hold on. This chat window. Yes, life insurance is definitely the safest investment. You're absolutely right. When it comes to investing, you definitely want to look inside yourself first before you venture out. That's a great point. Okay, so definitely want to start with yourself and then venture out. But just like the foundation of your financial plan itself, you just want to make sure that you pretty much look at disability, long-term care, and death. Make sure all those are covered, right? Those are not all the contingencies that you want to cover, but for a start, you can't go wrong there. Now, that's just stage 1. Stage 2 is this is your wealth accumulation. So essentially, from the time you get into the workforce all the way up until retirement, this is what this portion of the plan is going to cover. And really what you want to do is you want to make the most out of your money so you don't have to work as hard for it, right? And when it comes to accumulating wealth, telling somebody to just go invest is the wrong answer, right? Because investing, you can't just invest on what your buddy to the left of you did, because it doesn't necessarily reflect what you do. Things that you need to consider are your risk tolerance. Like, are you comfortable losing money, or better yet, putting money at risk for a higher yield? And vice versa. Are you more conservative? Do you want your money to work for you? Do you find comfort in just having it and pretty much posturing it so it may grow, but you won't lose any money? It all depends on the individual. So that's why it's very imperative that you sit down and you talk with a financial advisor and get that individual to understand that you have an intention and this is how you expect your money to pretty much walk down the line with you, X, Y, and Z. And one of the key factors that I have, especially when it comes to like young parents or brothers of younger siblings, or when I say brothers, sisters, older siblings versus younger siblings, it's the cost of college. Typically that's the most common thing that most people want to save for when it comes to long-term savings. And to be completely frank with you, the cost of college isn't going down. Like, we all know that whether the cost of going to college versus the advantages of going to college, those are debatable. But one thing that's not is that a typical 4-year university is going to hit you around 22 grand. Right? So there's definitely a sense of urgency to plan for that. But what I want you to also take away is that planning for college should not go above planning for your own retirement. Because, at the end of the day, the individual that you're planning to go to college can pretty much exercise other avenues, whether that's loans, grants, scholarships. But once it comes to your retirement, now you literally have to work longer. And depending on your health, that might not be an option for you. So now the individual that you were planning to go to college could be susceptible to essentially taking care of you. So it's definitely something that you want to prioritize it, but just don't essentially put it above your own benefit. And like, when it comes to retirement nowadays versus the old times, typically back in the day, when it came to retirement, people would just go back home, chill out on the front porch, and watch the sunset. And that was retirement for them. They were cool. Their expenses typically dwindled. But nowadays, people are looking at retirement to live their best life, essentially going out and traveling, seeing the world, buying houses, rental property, boats, vacations. And not to mention that people are living longer, whether that's due to nutrition or medical science, whatever. And typically what I find is that a majority of people are running out of money because they're outliving it. So you definitely want to find vehicles that will provide you a retirement that fits your lifestyle. Like, if you just want to if you're just following the directions from your company to say invest in your 401k or your IRA, that's great, to get the balls rolling. But you need to be, I guess you could say, have the fortitude to, I guess you could indulge deeper, for the simple fact that there's very different types of IRAs and 401ks, and each of them are affected differently by taxes. And depending on the lifestyle that you want to live will greatly differ based on the type that you choose, right? So you definitely want to invest your money in the vehicle that gives you the greatest chance of achieving the life that you want. Any questions so far? Nothing seen. Okay. Oh, and before we move on, another thing I wanted to hit on, just popped in my head, is that let's just say everybody turned 65 today. Everybody that's on the call, right? Understand that the common, or not even the common, but the average death for an American male is about 85 years old. And for a female, it's about 95. So typically, if everybody just turns 65, that means you have 30 years to live off your retirement. So it's very important that you sit down and you analyze and make sure that the retirement vehicle that you choose is going to allow you to live that lifestyle that you want and fund it appropriately, which is why you don't necessarily want to prioritize somebody going to college over your own retirement. And some of the considerations that you really want to take into account when it comes to retirement is A, the lifestyle you want to live, okay? The time horizon. Do you plan on retiring in the next 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, whatever? Essentially the accounts that you'll be going in, are they going to be non-qualified versus qualified? Essentially, are you going to do pre-tax contributions to your retirement account or post-tax? And essentially, how much money are you going to need to live off in retirement? Like, all those considerations you definitely want to take into account when speaking with a financial advisor about your plan, and ensure that that individual knows what your intentions truly are. And then when it comes to asset allocation, essentially this is a lot, mostly dealing with the market. And basically what the key takeaway from here is you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. So for instance, like a lot of people, they tend to invest in one particular stock, whether it's Coca-Cola company, Coca-Cola, Disney, Johnson & Johnson, whatever it is. And typically what I try to do is inform them that that's not the best idea, just for the simple fact you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, okay? Typically, what you want to do is you want to be well diverse. Therefore, you could take advantages of the ups and downs of the market, and not so much feel the downfalls, and take advantage of the financial opportunities when the market goes up. And you're only going to do that if you're well diverse, i.e., if you put all your money in real estate and the market busts, there goes your retirement. Now you don't have the time to make up essentially that financial loss, because how the market works is, if you invest, let's keep it simple. If you invest $10 into the market, and let's say the market drops 50 points, you're going to need to essentially make $20 just to get you back even. So it's definitely something to think about when it comes to investing into the investment market, or even I wouldn't say the investment market, but the stock market. And then we pretty much hit on the longevity. Essentially, key takeaway from this is, at this point in time, it's too late to start thinking about a financial plan. You honestly do not have the time nor the resources to fund a retirement at this point in time. Typically, not even 10 years or 20 years up until this point. Now, don't get me wrong. It's never too late to start financially planning, but to be adequate and realistic, the earlier you can start, the better. Now, typically when it comes to a retirement, you don't want to, that is not the time for you to cut corners, just for the simple fact that you're going to have rising costs in medical and healthcare expenses. And as I spoke about earlier with the long-term care, that's not going to, that cost is not going to go down, along with the cost of living. So everything in retirement is going to be expensive, more expensive than what you think it's going to be today. So realistically, you need to start planning early as possible for your future self, just to ensure that your money lasts as long as you do. And then this is really just I guess you could say this slide, the key takeaway from this is to ensure that you do not think or position yourself to have a financial plan as a one-time thing where you're just going to talk and that's it, right? The intent is to have a financial plan to be a living document so that it pretty much follows you and grows with your lifestyle or shrinks with it, whatever it is. But this isn't something where you're just going to look at it once. We're going to talk about it once, probably every year or something, and we're good. You should be talking with your financial advisor at a minimum once every 6 months. Typically, I like to go about 3 months just to ensure everything's valid and everything's smooth and gravy. But yeah, this isn't something where you're just going to check the block every year and then call it good. Step 3. So we're going to come about wealth preservation and distribution. And the whole key takeaway about this portion of the plan is to ensure that everything that you worked for is doing what you want it to do and going where you want it to go. Any questions so far? Nothing in the chat. None, sir. Okay, cool. So when it comes to distribution of assets, understand this model right here basically shows you a majority of all the buckets that you have as far as nesting your retirement assets, or your nest egg rather. And basically, whether it's your investments, 401ks, Roth IRAs, life insurance, or deferred annuities, essentially all those buckets are going to be used to funnel your cash reserve, your nest egg, and provide you a legacy if you intend to do generational planning and establish generational wealth. That's really how you're going to do it. Now, some of the things that I don't take into account as far as I guess you could say revenues during retirement are just like Social Security, just for the simple fact that you don't know when it's going to be there. But when it comes to it's a rarity nowadays, but if you get a pension or even if you establish some type of income annuity from let's say a lottery ticket or an inheritance or something like that, or maybe you sold real estate and set up an annuity that you could pull from it in retirement. All those things are variable buckets that you could use in order to fund your retirement. Now, the thing about retirement is that I really want to make sure that we understand today is that retirement is not an event. So just because you retired from a job doesn't mean you get to access your retirement accounts. Retirement is based on an age. So essentially, once you turn 59 and a half, that's when you'll have full-blown access to a majority of your retirement accounts, whether it's 401ks, investments, Roth IRAs, deferred annuities, whatever, right? And by that, what I mean is prior to age 59 and a half, if you were to access your 401k, your IRA, you're going to be susceptible to taxes and penalties. Now, what they are, they vary depending on the account, but typically anything before, minus some or caveat could be some personal financial hardships and things to that nature that might qualify for early exemption. But aside that, typically anything prior to 59 and a half is going to cost you some type of penalty and tax, somewhere in the tune between 30 and 55%. of whatever it is that you wanted to take out. Okay. We got chat room. So which one is better, 401ks or annuities? So honestly, that depends on the individual. So with the 401k, if you're a younger individual, definitely, I would probably recommend that we start the 401k just for the simple fact we have time on our side. But if you have an annuity, typically what an annuity is, it's a vehicle that you're able to fund for a certain amount of time. And then at that end of that time, you're able to switch it on to a income stream that's going to last the life of you or the policy, whichever one's longer. So essentially, like if you have, case in point, if you take $100 annuity, just for a case of example, to keep it simple, and let's say you save up $100 and then that was the time frame, it expires at 100. Now you flip it on, and for the next 10 years, or better yet, for the next, let's say you're 50, for the next 50 years, you're going to receive a $2 payment every year until that $100 is extinguished. Okay. So when it comes to annuities, if you're a working professional and you're young, I would definitely urge you to get the 401k, just for the simple fact that your employer probably is going to offer you the opportunity to match it. So essentially, you're going to grow that a lot faster. And then when it comes to an annuity, it's a fixed payment. Okay, that income stream that you're going to get from it doesn't change. So it's very susceptible to inflation. Case in point, think back to when you were 13 years old, or better yet, a teenager, and somebody gave you 10 bucks. How far could that go? It could go a lot, right? Like you could pretty much go to the movies, get popcorn and a meal. What about now? That same $10 is no different from the $10 that you got back then. The only difference is the purchasing power. And that loss of purchasing power is called inflation. And that is the biggest culprit to any fixed income, such as an annuity. So I would definitely sit there and really evaluate whether or not an annuity would be beneficial for the simple fact of inflation. And better yet, it really depends on the individual. But if the individual isn't dependent on that annuity solely for an income, then yes. If he has to, because there's going to come a point in time in which if you make too much money, you're going to get taxed on making too much money. So in order to get rid of it, an annuity is a great vehicle for that. And that's definitely something that we could talk about. But yeah, for the most part, it varies on the individual. Good question. But when we come back to this distribution of assets, one of the things that most people take for granted is essentially what their money is going to do in their legacy, or how they're going to set up generational wealth. Or let's just say you get to a point in which you're in retirement, but you suffer some type of accident where you no longer can make decisions on X, Y, and Z that pertain to your pretty much your financial empire. What are you going to do then? That's where estate planning comes into play. Now, before we roll into anything crazy, does anybody here think that estate planning is only something for the rich? Nothing seen? Good, because it's not, right? Pretty much, estate planning is ensuring that the stuff that you have, the money, your assets, are doing exactly what you want it to do, when you want it to do it, with who you want to do it, at the time you want it to be done. And you could do this as early as 18 and as late as you having all your motor skills and pretty much cognitive abilities. Okay. But you could establish as early as 18 to having pretty much talk to a lawyer and have an estate plan built so that your empire, as if you were to inherit something, a large sum of money, and you know that you have siblings coming up, i.e. younger brothers that are like 5, 6 years old, whatever, and you want to ensure that they're on the right path, you could use estate planning to ensure that they're going to get lump sums of money at different intervals of their lifetime so that you know that they're squared away, i.e. Our case in point, particularly me, my son, I have things in place so that he has to get good grades. Not so much go to college, but the intent is for him to get good grades and he'll receive X, Y, and Z. Same thing here. And then when it comes to funding your legacy, you want to ensure that your money, your empire is being used the way you want it. So whether it's giving back to your alma mater, a charity, or even a lump sum to your family members, you want to ensure that all that stuff is in place. And the best way to do that is to ensure that you have an estate plan in place. So really, to tie it all up, to have a nice sound financial plan, you need to have all your risk weighed. You pretty much have an answer for your risk management, a plan for you to accumulate as much wealth as you can, essentially employ every dollar to effectively make more dollars for you so you don't have to work as hard for them. And then pretty much a plan to preserve the wealth that you built and have the means to distribute it in the fashion in which you want it to be done. Okay? Any questions so far? I got something in the chat. What is the difference between long-term disability at work versus your company? Okay. So when it comes to long-term disability with an employer versus long-term disability to you, so let me back up. So what I do is I do personalizing. I specialize in personalized insurance so that it's associated to you instead of a company. So when it comes to your employer, a lot of things that people take, they don't take for granted, but they don't necessarily think about is all the benefits that your employer gives you belong to the employer. So if they decide to fire you, you lose those benefits. So you might have long-term disability while you're working. And let's say they lay off 50% and you just so happen to fall within that 50%. Now you have nothing. The difference between what I provide is that regardless of what that employer gives you, you have your own. So it's almost it's not in lieu of, but in addition to. Same thing with life insurance. Like your employers might give you $6,500 or let's say $650,000 worth of term insurance, which is great. Sounds good, especially for a young professional. But if you were to leave or get fired, so does that benefit. It no longer belongs to you. And just like disability income and life insurance, the older you are to start your own, the more expensive it's going to be. So if you work for a company for 8 years, understand you're still paying for that product, but it's not yours. So now, essentially, that's 8 years you just wasted because now you're older, and typically what it is your health deteriorates every day you get older. So now you're unhealthier. So now if you were to look into getting that type of coverage for yourself, you're going to be paying multiples more. So that's really where I provide value, is ensuring that you are good regardless of where you work. And now you have the option to opt into your employer's plan or not, essentially putting more money in your pocket. Plus, when you have a properly structured whole life plan, it's essentially like funding your own pension. So it's really just a benefit to you as far as having your own stuff. As we all know, like you're not going to take care of yourself any better, or better, I should say, nobody's going to take care of you better than you are. So that's really where the difference lies.
So
now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, if you have the option to opt in or opt out, do you think you should opt in and still get your own, or should you just opt out and just get your own, do it through yourself?
Well, if you could afford to do so, definitely get both. But if it's one of those things where you're trying to put your money to a more effective use, Yeah, definitely get your own, because your own is going to be cheaper and it's going to do more for you.
And where can you find your own? Like I'm 20, so where should I start looking for my own insurance?
So the best thing about that though is like I could definitely give you my contact, and we could help you look for that. Like that's easy. But your financial advisor should be able to sit down and get to know essentially your goals and your intentions for your lifestyle and build it based off of that. But what you really want to do is you want to ensure that your financial advisor is from a reputable company, and that company has a good standing as far as financial credibility and backbone. Because what's happening, especially nowadays in this present pandemic, is a lot of financial institutions are reevaluating the policies that they put out in raising rates, because they didn't plan appropriately. So it's really one of those things where you don't necessarily have to read the fine print, but you just have to do your homework. And in the next couple slides, you'll see all our stuff on there. Like we are, we've been doing this for over 150 years, you know what I'm saying? So like we know this space. Oh, what do you know? Next slide. Boom. So if your financial advisor, or better yet, let me go back. Your financial advisor or your even your insurance company, if they don't meet any of these metrics, like if they're anything less than this, I'm not saying that they're a bad company, but I'm saying that they're not the best. So Northwestern Mutual, what we do is I guess you say what sets us apart is our questions. We sit down and we try to get to know you better, not only on a personal standpoint, but professionally and financially. And we try to get the wheels thinking, because let's face it, not everybody knows everything about finances. So the more questions we could ask you to get the balls thinking of contingencies that could happen to you, the better. Like a lot of my clients, one of the best, I guess you could say, one of the best feedback. That doesn't sound right. But one of the best compliments I ever got from one of my clients was allowing them to put themselves in reality. Like once they see their own situation on paper in front of them, it's really hard to sit down and lie about that. So definitely look into the background, the company, and the financial strength. But like I said, I'll put my contact information up. Well, I'm not sure if Christina, do you have that? Because I could definitely, well, it's on the flyer, I think, huh?
It isn't, but what I was going to do after this was going to attach that information on there. But I have been tagging you on LinkedIn and
Yep.
Facebook to all of the postings as far as the flyer is concerned. So, but I will put that up.
Okay. Yeah. So definitely appreciate that. But yeah, that's really what you want to do. And with you being 20, it's really the prime time for you, because honestly, like if you had the intention to be a millionaire by the time you're 65, it's really easy for you to do. It's less than $400 a month that you have to put aside. And I'm not just talking about any product. Like if you were to put $400 into a savings account every month for the next 40 years, you'll hit $1 million. You'll surpass that easily, just because of how compounding interest works. But if you were to wait 5 years and wait until you're 25, understand that price doubles almost to around $900 a month. So the cost of waiting it's exponentially more expensive. So definitely, if you have the means, start early. And after this presentation, I'll stay on for like maybe 10 minutes, and I'll put my contact information up on the screen. And by all means, feel free to make an appointment. That's easy. They're free. Like we don't charge for any of our consultations. All right, so let's see. Any questions? Let me see. Okay, nothing heard. All right, so I definitely want to thank you guys for coming out and, spending the last hour with me. And really, Christina, thank you for providing a platform. Next time, I'll definitely be in the office so that we could all enjoy that Hawaiian sunrise.
Thank you. We truly appreciate the opportunity to be able to record this so that for our other, what we call our savers, or other individuals that are interested in finding more information about the topics that you have spoke about and will speak about. We truly appreciate just giving us the opportunity to record, and also spending the time to give us that knowledge and being open to educating other individuals and even giving other individuals the opportunity to become your clients. So definitely truly appreciate it. And we're truly excited to see you next week.
Oh man, I definitely appreciate that. And trust
Absolutely.
me, it's gonna be good. And like today was a little weird just for the simple fact I'm at the house, but yeah, next course will definitely be better.
It's fine. Just blame it on COVID.
But before you guys leave, I definitely want some feedback. How was it?